Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Reserved Investments. This is the dimension of imagination. It is an area which we will call Reserved Investments. You are about to enter this other dimension, a dimension not only of sight and sound, but of mind, a journey into a wondrous land of imagination. Now, why am I quoting the Twilight Zone's opening monologue in this particular video? Because we have another record-breaking auction sale in the realm of antiques and collectibles to report on. So for those unaware, it would appear that a copy of Amazing Spider-Man 1, graded by CGC in 9.6 condition with white pages, second highest copy graded no less, just sold through Hake's auctions out of York, Pennsylvania for a little over $520,000. This is the highest price ever paid for this particular comic book. Now, personally, if I was going to spend $520,000+ on a comic book, I would not be buying an Amazing Spider-Man 1. I would probably go after a particular Golden Age key or potentially an Amazing Fantasy 15. I would not be spending that kind of money, especially paying a record-breaking price for an Amazing Spider-Man 1. So we have to talk about this because it is important. Because in case you guys are unaware of this, the Fed, the Federal Reserve, just decided to raise interest rates another 0.25%. So if this particular individual would have put this $520,000+ in a simple brokerage money market fund, they would be getting well over 5% on their money right now, which translates to an amount this high just without compound interest, just looking at this just from the standpoint of simple interest, well over $25,000 in interest payments alone without really tying up their principal, meaning the money that's sitting there is pretty much liquid and it's low risk. So we kind of have to ask ourselves, why did this particular individual pay this high price for this particular book? Well, it's kind of obvious. He most likely wanted this particular item and he had the money to buy it. Now, the reason why I'm doing this video is, if you guys recall, back on June 20th, 2023, I put out a video entitled Investing in Comic Books. Superman dies at auction. Is there a such thing as a blue chip collectible? And in that video, I went over a recent golden auction sale where a copy of Action Comics 1 sold for $130,000 less than the previous sale, and a copy of Superman 1, more importantly, sold for a little over $1 million less than the previous sale. And a lot of the Timmies, Kimmies, and Poindexters attacked me because they claim it was because that particular consignor utilized golden auctions instead of going with one of the big boys like Heritage Auctions or Comic Link or Comic Connect. And I still adamantly disagree with that assessment, and here's proof. Hake's over here, who's well known for action figures, political memorabilia, and yes, pop culture collectibles. They just sold this Amazing Spider-Man 1 in CGC 9.6 condition for a record-breaking price. Just to put this in perspective for you, I honestly thought that this book, this Amazing Spider-Man 1, in CGC 9.6 condition with white pages, if this book would have got $400,000, my jaw would have hit the floor. When I saw this end auction result for a little over $520,000, I almost fell the fuck over, guys. This is a monumental price to be paying for this book in the current economic environment that we find ourselves in. This is why I always tell you, collectibles, especially pop culture collectibles, are extremely volatile. There is no such thing as a blue chip collectible in these markets because you can't predict these markets. If you look, the person that consigned those books to golden auctions, the Superman books, the Superman 1 and the Action Comics 1, he was probably thinking he's going to be fine. He's doing okay because they're known blue chip keys in vintage comic books. This particular individual just consigns an Amazing Spider-Man 1 CGC 9.6 He probably thinks, hey, I'm probably going to get $350, $375 for this particular book. No, blows the barn door wide open, and the dude ends up with $520,000 for this particular book. This is what we call in the business, just so that you guys are aware, the seller got a good deal. Let's put it that way. That's really what this means. If you ever seen that on Pawn Stars, you're ever watching an episode of Pawn Stars where they bring in one of the experts and Rick goes, hey, did I overpay for this item? Well, let's just say, Rick, the seller got a good deal. That's what happened here, guys. This particular consignor struck pay dirt. Now, this is where it gets interesting. And this is what we have to focus on. The real test to this book is going to be if it ever comes up for auction again. Let's say 6 months from now, let's say a year from now, this particular individual needs money and he consigns it to auction. That's how we're going to see how smart this particular individual was for paying this high of a price for this particular book. Or maybe he holds it 10, 20, 30 years. Maybe he holds it his whole life, then he ends up dying, and then it gets kicked to auction to be consigned. So 30, 40 years out, we're going to figure out what this book sells for and if it was a good investment paying this high a price. Do I think this book was a good investment at $520,000+? Absolutely not. If somebody would have came to me and said, Sean, I'm thinking of paying $520,000+ for a copy of Amazing Spiderman 1 in CGC 9.6 condition, I would tell them, you know, do you already own an Amazing Fantasy 15? If not, maybe it's best you go after a better condition copy. If you really want to spend all $520,000+ on it, you could probably get a very, very good condition copy of Amazing Fantasy 15 at present time. But I would never, ever recommend anybody pay a record-breaking price for a book like this because it's not even the first appearance of Spider-Man. This is pretty much just the first issue of the comic book. So in my opinion, I can't get behind this sale from the individual standpoint who bought this particular item for a record price. Now, that being said, those of you who will recall, back when video games were going insane, there was a Super Mario 64 graded by Waddick Games in 9.8 condition that sold for a little over $1.5 million. And I knew that was an insane price. And a lot of people came into the comment section and they said, Sean, you don't understand. That particular individual just wants to own the game. I get it. But you still have to utilize some type of financial sense if you are attempting to buy these particular items, hold them, and then possibly sell them back into the market. Or even if you're planning to hold them until you die. You know, guys, one thing that I can tell you is, and I know this personally, wealthy people tend to value money more, not less. Most wealthy people don't just go, oh, I had the money, I want that, I'm going to spend my money on it. Because if they keep doing that, they're not going to be wealthy for long. So it's just something that I want to put in your mind. Those of you that claim that those particular Superman books that sold for such a low price was because they went through golden auctions, I firmly disagree, and here's proof. Because Hake's auction over here wasn't on par with Heritage or comic books until now, pretty much, in that particular market, and they just got a record-breaking price. Most collectors and investors know where to find these particular items at auction, guys. If they're a major player, if they're a major auction house, whether it's Golden, Comic Link, Heritage, Hake's, even Morphe's auctions, pretty much most people that are in the market for this stuff and have the money to spend on it, they know where to look for it. The overall auction house doesn't matter unless if they would have went with a small mom and pop auction house that pretty much did not even have an internet presence. That would be a different story entirely. But make no mistake, this just shows how volatile the collectible marketplace and unpredictable the collectible marketplace is at present time. Thank you for watching. Have a great night. I would love to get your thoughts and feedback in the comment section below. Thanks.